Sergey Kovalev has made some interesting comments regarding a potential showdown with fellow Russian Beterbiev. But before I get to those comments, I first want to address something which one of my subscribers said in the comment section to my last video where I talked about Sergey Kovalev, in which I talked about Sergey Kovalev. And the comment, I'm paraphrasing here, but the comment was something like, I've noticed that you never talk about the fact that Kovalev offered Adonis Stevenson a 50-50 deal. Well, first and foremost, he's only just offered Stevenson that deal. So how you expected me to have been talking about it in my past few videos is beyond me. It doesn't make any sense. He's only just made the offer. I only heard about this offer after I made my last video about Sergey Kovalev and Beterbiev and Stevenson. So I wasn't aware of this offer. But since then, I've gone to look at the offer. Okay, it's now out in several articles that Kathy Duver has come forward and said, yeah, we'll give Stevenson 50-50. And the person who left this comment again, this gentleman said it was a very generous offer by Sergey Kovalev, this 50-50 deal. Well, the offer is, to be honest with you, a non-starter. This offer's going nowhere because this offer is for Stevenson to fight Kovalev on HBO. Whereas Stevenson and his promoter manager, Yvonne Michel, have come forward and said, we are happy to take that 50-50 offer to fight Kovalev as long as we put the fight on the open market, which means that the two networks, Showtime and HBO, can bid for the fight. Because, you know, according to Yvonne Michel, they don't want to fight on just on HBO because HBO might not be able to pay them as much money as Showtime will pay them. So let the networks bid for it, and whoever comes up with the highest bid, they'll fight on that network. That, to me, is a far more reasonable proposition than what Sergey Kovalev and Main Events are proposing. In terms of networks bidding, earlier this year, the Lucas Matisse Ruslan Provodnikov fight went up to a network bid. Okay, that fight was up for the networks to bid. I believe HBO won that bid. So let the networks put the money where the mouth is and let's see who can pay the highest price for the fight. And for those of you who think, oh, Stevenson should just take a price cut, he just take a pay cut and not fight on Showtime or not allow the networks to bid. Well, you might say that in one sentence, but you'll be eating your words when I tell you about this article to do with Kovalev and Beterbiev. Now, I'm not going to read out everything that Kovalev said in this article because it's an interview, so you can go read it for yourselves. It's on boxingscene.com. I've left a link in the description below. But let me just read you a couple of the questions and answers from this Sergey Kovalev interview. The first question is, what is your next goal? Am I right that you're coming back to Russia and looking for Artur Beterbiev as your possible opponent? And Kovalev says, we shall see. We have to think about it. And later on in the same answer, he says, we shall consider the options and choose the best from the sportive, showbiz and financial points of view. So here you have Kovalev talking about finances, and it's perfectly understandable. There's a risk-reward element when it comes to picking opponents, and that goes for most fighters. There are very few fighters who just say, yeah, give me the toughest guy and I don't care about the money. If they are going to fight the toughest guy, most guys want to be sufficiently financially compensated for it and they want to get the most amount of money possible for that fight. That is what Stevenson is trying to do in terms of, or his team, in terms of saying that the Kovalev-Stevenson fight should be placed on the open market and the network should be allowed to bid for it. And whichever network comes up with the most money, they'll fight on that network, whether it's HBO or Showtime. That is a reasonable offer from the Stevenson team, but it's an offer that the Kovalev team are simply not willing to even consider. And remember, this is the networks now. So if HBO were to bid, Kovalev wouldn't get in trouble if HBO bid in that because HBO are the ones who have the contract with Kovalev. So that is a perfectly reasonable offer. And that is Stevenson trying to get the most amount of money for a, big fight with Kovalev. It's reasonable. And here we have Kovalev, as I've just quoted, talking about finances. He has to consider finances, which is the best financial option. So you can't chastise Stevenson for doing that kind of stuff and then let Kovalev off the hook. If you're going to, be understanding of the risk-reward situation, fighters trying to go for the best money particularly for risky fights, then you either give both guys a pass or you give neither guy a pass. Which is it? Be consistent. Don't be hypocritical. Now, later on in this interview, the second question I'm going to read out from it is even more interesting than that first one and even more revealing, because if you remember, Kathy Duva earlier in the week said that she's considering having Sergey Kovalev fight a voluntary defense against Artur Beterbiev in Russia later on in the year. Now, I wasn't 100% convinced that Kathy Duva was serious about it. And to me, it almost seemed like some type of PR stunt, that she was just trying to get Kovalev to be seen as this feared fighter again, who's going out there hunting down all the top contenders. Not like the top contenders are gunning for him. He's hunting them down. And don't get it twisted, Sergey Kovalev is an excellent fighter. I'm not here to try and deride him or diminish him in any way. I'm actually, I love watching Sergey Kovalev fight. He's one of my favorite fighters to watch at the moment, but I'm just being fair and balanced here, because a lot of people out there are not fair and balanced. So I'm just putting it out there. Now, the next question they ask Kovalev, they say, you have said before that Beterbiev should go through elimination fights to be granted his shot at your title. Now you want to fight him ahead of the queue, according to Kathy Duva. Are you confident in your victory? Now, I'm not going to read out the entire answer that he gives. You can read that for yourselves, but I'll just pick out one of the most important parts of the answer. He says, I don't wish to give Artur, as in Artur Beterbiev, a ground to get fame all over the world by fighting me. He is known well in Russia, but by getting a shot at my title, he will have a chance to get fame worldwide. So here Kovalev is saying that he don't want to give Beterbiev a shot at his title voluntarily because he don't like the guy. He later on goes on to say in the interview he doesn't like Beterbiev and he's never liked him. And he says he would like to smash his face in, but he wants Beterbiev to go the long way round to get a title shot. He's not going to give him one voluntarily. And, he says he doesn't want to give the guy a payday, basically. Now, who does that sound like? That sounds familiar, innit? That sounds like Amir Khan when he's talking about Kell Brook. That's what it sounds like. I don't want to give him a payday. And now you got the all-conquering Kovalev saying the same thing about Beterbiev. Basically, I don't want to give him a payday. So I don't think this fight will happen. Maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I'll be cheering and celebrating if I am wrong. And if Kovalev does decide to give Beterbiev a fight, a voluntary shot at his title, I'll be happy, the happiest wrong guy ever, right, if that happens. But I can't see it happening. I don't think Kathy Duva will allow it to happen. I think she's just talking rubbish, to be honest with you, to try and hype up her fighter. And I think Kovalev knows how dangerous that fight really is. So, I don't know. One thing I will say, though, is if they are serious about fighting Beterbiev, there's more chance of them doing a deal with Beterbiev now and getting more money from that fight than if Beterbiev becomes mandatory. Because if Beterbiev becomes mandatory, that means he gets a guaranteed percentage of the purse. Whereas if they make a deal with him now for a voluntary, Beterbiev doesn't get a guaranteed percentage of the purse. They could give him less money now than he would get if he's mandatory. So if Kovalev's really serious about the fight, maybe they should try and get the fight as a voluntary now, if they're really serious about it. Because from a financial point of view, it's going to be more beneficial for Kovalev to do it as a voluntary rather than a mandatory. And it's not like, Beterbiev is miles away from a mandatory. He's not. Beterbiev is number 2 in the IBF rankings. So all he's got to do is fight one eliminator and he's mandatory for Kovalev's title. So Kovalev has either got to fight Beterbiev in winter this year as a voluntary, or he's going to have to fight him next year in a mandatory. You know, winter this year in a voluntary for, you know, a higher percentage, or a mandatory next year for a slightly lower percentage. Take your pick, Kovalev. So again, interesting article, interesting interview. Go read it for yourselves and you will see that it's not as cut and dry as some of you guys like to make out, this light heavyweight situation. It's not just Kovalev up there willing to fight anyone and then Stevenson ducking and, you know, Beterbiev doing whatever. It's not really like that. Kovalev himself understands now that he's in a position of, you know, power, financial power. Kathy Duva certainly realizes that, and they don't want to jeopardize that without being substantially compensated financially. They're basically in the same situation that Stevenson was in when Kovalev was trying to get the Stevenson fight. The Kovalev who was trying to get that Stevenson fight, the pre-Hopkins Kovalev, is not the same Kovalev that we have today. He's got much more to lose today, and he's acting accordingly. And that's understandable. Again, you know, I'm not here to chastise him about that, to criticize him harshly about that. I'm just here to be consistent. That's all it is. Some of you guys don't have any consistency, man. You're hypocritical. So drop your comments below. Let me know how you feel. What's happening. I'm out.